Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you everybody for allowing me to come chat with you today. Very excited. When we originally spoke and having this opportunity, it worked out really well. So I've actually done a few speaking engagements this week already. Have a few more coming up. So I think I'm starting to hit my groove a little bit. I think I'm starting to get into this. So I hope we have some fun. Yes, my name is Michael Rasile. I am the author of Winning in Sports Business. I'm going to share my screen here because I have a little slideshow put together. Essentially, the goal of what I wanted to do with Winning in Sports Business was I wanted to write a book for 18-year-old me that was going into college to understand how the heck you get a job in sports, because it's the only thing I care about. Like, my schedule is based around sports. Everything that I do is when are my favorite teams playing, and I want to work in that industry. It's the one thing that I have the most passion for. So when I was coming out of school, this was 6, 7 years ago now, I was told you can either go sell tickets and, make 1,000 phone calls a day, or you can go be a sports agent, which is just a whole nother entirely different animal. And I didn't really want to do that either. I then quickly found out I hated my job. I needed to get into sports and figure out a way to get there. So it's it's really interesting and it's a lot of fun, and we'll get into me a little bit. But essentially, what I want to talk to you today is how to get a job in sports. The name of the book is Winning in Sports Business. I've interviewed over 300 people in the sports business world to understand how they broke in, why they broke in, and what they did once they got there. So I believe that I have a couple lessons that I can share with everyone. What I'm going to be doing today in the next 10 minutes essentially is going over three different stories from three different people that I've interviewed that are in the book, that each come from a different area, right? We have a gentleman who started at the lowest possible level and worked his way up to being very important in a company. We have a female who's a sleep doctor actually, and she did not have any aspirations to work in sports, but through networking connections, she was able to come in through the back door. And then we have another gentleman who started his own sports media company, and they have become very successful over the last few years. So, who am I? I am a business owner. The name of my business is Our Athletes. I work with Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and I help them with sponsorship and endorsement opportunities. Podcast host. So, I have two podcasts. The main one is For the Love of Sports. I highly suggest, if there's one thing I could ask, is you got to go check it out. As I said, I've interviewed over probably 300 people now in the sports business universe, as I said, of how they broke in and why they did it. So, hopefully, you can find some value in there. Our Athletes is the interview show where I have interviewed over 150 Olympic and Paralympic athletes on their story and path to the games. I am a radio host where I talk about sports betting and fantasy sports. And as you see there, also, I am the author of Winning in Sports Business. So, this first story, gentleman by the name of Mark Simon. I guess you guys don't have ESPN, maybe, right? I don't think so, right? That's our like main. You've probably heard of ESPN. I don't need to get too deep into that. But Mark wrote, he was in college, working at a local newspaper, wanted to get a job at ESPN. That was always one of his dream jobs. But before that even happened, there's a particular baseball writer that he really liked. And he sent him a cute little story about Charlie Brown and how it made sense with one of the games that happened the day before. And it was really adorable and not too much from it. It was kind of innocuous. And the baseball writer actually used his, a little joke of a story in his column the next day. Mark thought it was absolutely fantastic. He had so much fun with it. He was so elated that he got to see what he wrote being put into a newspaper, especially through somebody that he had high regard and respect for. About a year later, Mark started to look for jobs at ESPN because he wanted that dream job of his. And he said, I'm going to apply, but I don't want to just give my resume to this giant corporation and just be a number a number in a box, and they're going to look at it and probably not care and never get the opportunity. So he said, I know one person at ESPN. So I'm going to reach out to the gentleman that he reached out to a year prior and say, hey, I'm just looking for a job. You don't have to give me the job. I'm just looking for the name of the hiring manager. This gentleman gives him the name of the wrong hiring manager. He then gets the name of the correct hiring manager and is eventually hired at ESPN. He made his time. He was on camera for many years. He's now a high level position at Sports Info Solutions. They do a lot with sports and analytics. The fun part about this story is Mark worked his way all the way from the bottom. He started as a research intern at ESPN, made it all the way onto camera. Obviously, that's not the rule. That's more the exception. But he very clearly did a lot of work to get there. but he got the opportunity at ESPN by giving value. So that is the one thing. If you can take anything from the next 10 minutes of me speaking, understand this: give other people value, do the right thing because it's the right thing. Give and don't ask for anything in return, right? Do not have the expectation that you give them $5, you then have the expectation they'll give you 10 back. Just give them $5 because it's the right thing to do. So if there is one thing that you can start doing now, is start meeting people, talking to them, and see how you can help them. Because I'm a huge, huge believer in karma. I think good things happen to good people. So if you can go find people, see where they need help, and help them without any expectation in return, don't expect anything in return, good things will eventually happen to you. And that is what happened here. Mark gave the funny story to his favorite baseball writer, didn't expect anything in return, didn't get his name in the paper, anything like that. But eventually he was then rewarded by asking that writer, and he then went and got a job at ESPN, and he's done some pretty cool stuff since. This story, Dr. Meeta Singh, she is a sleep doctor. She was eating lunch one day. She was a fellow in Detroit, Michigan. She was eating lunch one day, and the local American football team doctor came on to the news, the local news, and was talking about how they got their sleep doctor and how they're going to do so many good things. And he started rattling off all the information that the sleep doctor told them, and how great the Lions were going to be that year and how fantastic it was going to be. And while Dr. Singh was eating her salad, she was listening and realized that all of that information was incorrect. So she just called up that sleep doctor and said, "Hey, I don't know who you spoke with, but everything they told you is a lie, or they just gave you the worst possible information. And if anything, this is going to be a detriment to you and your team." The Lion sleep doctor said, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you come in and speak with our team, and you can tell us what we need to do and how we need to do it." So Dr. Singh went in. She spoke with the entire the football team there, gave them all this great information. They loved it. They then introduced her to the local baseball team in Detroit, the Tigers. She went in, gave them all this information. They loved it. She then went to the local hockey team, spoke to the Detroit Red Wings. They loved all the information. She was then introduced to all these incredible conferences where she got to speak with all these people and stand up and talk to everybody about the skills that she has acquired, the knowledge that she has, and the desire to help people through the world of sleep. Dr. Singh has now essentially worked with every single major sports team here in America. She works with teams through their playoff runs. She works with teams all the time when they go over to London for when we play the London game over there, the football game. And most recently, she worked with the Washington Nationals, helped them win their World Series in 2019. And what I want you to understand from this one is networking is very key. But if you're not going to get a job in sports immediately, you have to go somewhere and understand the skills, the knowledge, and have the desire to get really, really, really good at something. Dr. Singh had these skills and the knowledge and the desire to get really, really good at whatever the heck being a sleep doctor is and how she needs to do it. And she knows the ins and outs of every little thing. So that way, when she got high enough in her career, the opportunity came, she was able to just say, "Well, I know everything I know about sleep. So now I can help you and this team and all these people and all these incredible athletes." And that has allowed Dr. Singh, as I said, she didn't care about sports. She wasn't interested. She didn't know any of the football players that her husband watched every single day on TV, every Sunday on TV. But she knew how to help them the most. And she was then able to bring those skills, the knowledge and desire to them to help her get a job within sports, kind of coming through the back door. And then the last story that I'll leave you with, this gentleman's name is Adam White. He's the CEO and founder of Front Office Sports. If you're not familiar, I have down at the bottom there, sign up for their newsletter. Go to frontofficesports.com, sign up for their newsletter. It is an incredible, incredible business newsletter that comes to your inbox every morning. Highly, highly suggested. Adam wanted to get a job in sports. So he went out and did informational interviews. He just went out and spoke to a lot of people and said, "Hey, like, little different things, network, meet people, and do whatever." Doing these interviews and letting them kind of go away, he decided, let me do these interviews, I'll write them down, and then I'll just put them somewhere. So essentially, he just started a blog. And then these interviews started to get some traction. And then he started to interview more prominent people. And then everybody started to actually pay attention to his blog and the things that were going there. And he eventually, him and another student of his, or a co-student of his, they decided to actually turn this into a sports business page where he would interview more people. They would look at different ideas, look at different things. What's the sponsorships? What's going on in the business side of sports? And now Front Office Sports is one of the most prominent figures in the sports media space when it comes to the business of sports. Now, this again is a different story because he built his own thing. These are all capable, right? As I said, I've interviewed over 400 people. I unfortunately wasn't as smart as Adam to turn it into a company, but the opportunity is there. And the reason why I like to end with this story is because many people in college, this is what he was doing. He was just trying to talk to people to A, network, B, find out opportunities about jobs, and C, set himself apart. And I think the set himself apart thing is extremely important because if you go out and meet one person a day and understand who they are and have conversations and questions and get to know who they are, and then put it somewhere like Adam did, he put it on a website, the opportunity to get a job is significantly better. Everyone's going to have great grades. Everyone's going to have a cool internship that their uncle got them at some bank from their local town, whatever. Everybody's going to have volunteer opportunities. But how many people have taken the time to create a podcast, create a website, create a blog, do anything like that, where he was able to take the information that he learned, put it somewhere for other people to enjoy? I think that is one of the more important things outside of networking, which we spoke about multiple times already. Adding value, that's what you always have to do on an every single day, daily basis. But if you can set yourself apart by doing that fun and free work, that I think is going to be the biggest opportunity for you to get a position and a job somewhere, because you're not going to get hired to do something in sports if you haven't done it already. The supply and the demand are so extremely high. Everybody wants these cool jobs. There's not that many of them. How are you going to set yourself apart? And I think what Adam did to try and set himself apart was one of the best possible things by putting the work out there, doing the work, and then putting it out there to give you the opportunity to set yourself apart in a free and a fun way. I know unpaid internships aren't fun, and that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is for you to create something on your own, start something that you can do and point to when you're in interviews, that you can put on a resume. I've known multiple people that have started podcasts and then gotten jobs in the space they started a podcast for because they were able to say, hey, look what I did. I started this. This is how much I want a job in this area. So I will say this one more time: add value everywhere you go. Good things happen to good people. I believe karma is real. If there's anything you can do to help somebody else, do it without the expectation of anything in return. But never, ever be afraid to ask, because other people want to do good things for other people. That's just how it goes. So the one thing I will ask of all of you is just to check out the podcast. I'm going to give you the book for free. You can have it. You can take it. There's way more cool stories in there than the 3 that I've outlaid here today. I hope there's a lot of information and value in there. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, Michael.Rasile1 at Gmail. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, Michael Rasile. If you want to follow me on Twitter as well, Michael Rasile1. But please, there's one last thing that you take. Just be a good person. It's funny how silly it sounds. It's funny how it seems so easy and normal. But if you are a good thing, good things happen to good people. I believe that, and that is what came up in almost every single story and every single interview that I've done to this point. So with that, I will stop sharing. And if anybody has some questions, I am all ears.
Yeah, I can start, because you mentioned, for example, that it's very good when you approach someone and you are value added actually in the company, clouds, whatever it is. And like, for someone who, for example, started at the university undergraduate level, I would say, do you think, or do you have an example from your experience, what was the example of the value added that the young person can bring about? And for me, for example, that the first thing that comes to my mind is the different perspective that the young person brings to the company. It's very valuable. I had, for example, this experience that they appreciated actually my, during the internship, my viewpoints on the certain issues, because like I look at the world from the different angle, from the different glasses. And like, what kind of value added can the young person bring, especially in the sports sector, when you are not an athlete per se?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is a good question. And the one thing, and I apologize to answer it like this, but it's so subjective, right? Like, as you said, like that one opportunity, you were able to give a different viewpoint, which I think is a great example. But I think more importantly is you don't know what the value is to add until you have a conversation with somebody. You have to have that conversation and see what is important to them. What are they looking for? What can you help them with? that maybe they don't know or they do know you can help them with, right? You probably know somebody. Maybe they're looking for a particular deal with a specific company that your friend's dad works for. Anything along those lines, if there's any way that you can help someone, you just have to have a real conversation with them. In terms of young people, what I've found, especially either in college or coming out of college, again, I don't mean to harp on it. It's what I love to do, but having conversations and interviewing people, it's a nice ego trip, right? Like people like to be thought of as important and oh, I'm impressive, and you kind of go over all their accomplishments and everything, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to put this out to the world. My audience is going to listen to this. It doesn't matter if the audience is just your mom and your dad, right? It's still the opportunity for them to share their story. So, in all seriousness, the easiest way to add value is to let somebody talk about themselves for a little bit. As silly as that sounds, it works every single time. Everybody loves talking about themselves. Everybody loves talking about what they've accomplished, what they want to do, their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. You can just put that somewhere, put that out on the internet, and let other people check it out. That is probably the easiest thing you can do at 18, 19, 20 years old, especially knowing that your network's not nearly as big, or maybe your ideas aren't fully developed yet. I would say that's probably the easiest thing. And I've seen many other people of young age. Again, Adam did the same thing. That's how he gained such a big network, just by sharing other people's stories.
Yeah, and the second question is more practical. So when, for example, we finish that meeting and someone wants to start a podcast or interviewing, even in the written form. So we also know that in the sports sector, especially media sports sector, there's a huge competition right now because like the barriers of entry are so low right now because of the YouTube and other media or the medium. And like the question is, based on your experience with the athletes, professional athletes, and their reactions. So what was like the main motivation for them to come to you actually? And the question is, because just want to know how to attract these athletes to hear from you first, your invitation, and then accept your invitation. And I'm not saying like LeBron James right now because like it's obvious that he
Yeah.
will reject, right, or he will even not read. But like even at the very grassroots level, so how to attract action, build that community slowly, without like thinking about the huge career in the sports media, but just to start with something.
Yeah. So, in terms of athletes, my business is a little bit different the way that I have attracted them, but really, again, it comes down to value. If you can go to an athlete and say, "Hey, I know a person at brand X, and maybe we can figure out a way to get you a deal." If you show up, and this was how it was taught to me, if you show up to someone and say, "I have $1 million for you, I'm going to take 20%," are you going to say no? Who says no to $800,000, right? So it's one of those things where if you can understand the space, you have to have those skills, the knowledge and desire, right? You have to understand how to do negotiation and find the brand deals. You have to have the knowledge about the space and the desire to do it. If you develop those three things and you have the ability to go out there and talk to these athletes and say, "I know how to do this. I have the skills to make you money." You don't charge them anything up front. You don't charge anyone anything. If you just say, "Hey, would it be cool if I tried to help you make money?" Who says no to that? That's an immediate value add because you're putting your time, your effort, your energy there to say, "I want to help you make money. This is how I'm going to do it. This is what I know about it. And this is why I want to do it. Would it be cool if I helped you?" Now, again, LeBron James is going to say no, but depending on the size of the athlete and also know your customer, right? Like if you're going to these incredible soccer stars or incredible, Olympic athletes or whatever, they're probably going to say no. But if you kind of take a step down, a rung or two, right? You're working with, like lower level athletes and you go to them and say that, they're not going to say no. And then what you do is you help them and then you can go to the higher ones and say, "Hey, look, I helped this guy make $100,000. You don't think I can make you $250,000?" So it's really a time play. But again, that goes back to the skills, knowledge, and desire of understanding exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, developing those skills again with those lower level athletes, and then being able to go out and execute upon that at a high level. And then you'll be able to go, maybe not work with LeBron James, but there's many other athletes out
Yeah,
there.
sure. And just to clarify one point, I know that some your operations say your firm will, like you won't share them, but of course, but like I just want to clarify for the audience one thing. So probably when you said, for example, podcast or interviewing, many people thought like, okay, you invite someone, you interview, you publish it for free and so on. And now you're going into the space of more like a sponsorship or being intermediary between like athletes and helping them make money. Could you like explain in a broad terms actually, because I know your company is like it's your child actually, so yeah, it won't be so public, but like explain how the process works, so where so you, for example, first contact the companies who may be interested in cooperation with athletes, and then you go to the athletes and propose the deals, or where's the money in
Vice
this?
versa. So I go to the athletes and I understand who they are, what they're about, and why they love it. And then that way I can understand what companies we can then go to, because we want to do this in an authentic way,
Okay.
right? I need to know what athletes, what sport you do, where are you from, why do you love Chipotle so much, right? And then understand, then we can go to Chipotle and say, okay, I have these three athletes. They all are from these different sports. This is why they love your brand. This is why they would be honored to represent you and your opportunity. So you have to talk to the athletes first, because I believe in authenticity. I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to marketing, is if you have the athletes and understand what they want and what they're trying to do, you can then make a list of companies and say, hey, like these are the brands that they use. These are the companies that they like. These are the things that they talk about. Now we can go to those companies, those brands, and those corporations and say, hey, I have these athletes that like this and they want to do this. What can we do? What can we figure out? How can we make this valuable to you and the athlete? Usually the athlete, it just means dollars or products. And then what can we do moving forward? So you go to the athlete first, at least that's how I've done it, and then go to the companies after.
And just to clarify the last point, actually, in this kind of sort of questions, the most popular probably is the commercials, like pure commercials, because like the win-win situation for both sides. And can you like share what's like other maybe less popular streams of revenue for athletes, especially those lower level, or maybe not lower level, but like those who are not on in the spotlight every day?
Yeah, social media. Everybody's athletes were the original influencers. I love. Someone told me that, like, obviously it's been months ago now, but athletes were the original influencers, right? Michael Jordan and Larry Bird playing hoops for that McDonald's commercial, right? Michael Jordan and his sneakers, like they were the original influencers. So understanding that that is still the case, right? And again, working with lower level athletes, I actually like working with them right now during a pandemic. It kind of stinks because the numbers just aren't as big, unfortunately, but these athletes, while their audiences are smaller, they're more engaged, because how many swimmers are out there, right? The number is big, but all these, little girls and boys look up to these 10, 15, 20, 25 swimmers that are here in the United States that are well-ish known. So while the numbers total might be smaller, the engagement numbers are going to be bigger, and they're going to have a bigger connection with their audience from that standpoint. So that's why I really like to focus on the lower level Olympic athletes, because they have that opportunity. So it's understanding the social media side of it, the meet and greets, the shaking hands, kissing babies, autographs. It's really nothing revolutionary. And now with everything again in the pandemic, it really comes down to creating content, creating compelling content. It's not just taking a picture with a box and being like, I love this box. Like that does nothing. Like show me you actually enjoying the product and doing something with it. And then that way, authentically, the audience can really become a part of that story. And then people will actually go out and buy the product, and the athlete will then hopefully be on for another year and make some more money. And that's the ultimate goal.
Okay, so Chris, you have a question, so go ahead.
Hey Michael, how's it going?
Great, Chris. How are you?
Good, thank you. So earlier today, I was checking just a little bit what you do and a little bit of your background, and I noticed how you like started as sales intern, but then went to a financial advisor and everything. But my question is, what was like the turning point which made you go, okay, I'm gonna start working on my craft, and this is what I'm about to do?
Yeah.
Like, which was or what was it, the turning
Awesome.
point?
Awesome question, man. I always love talking about it. I hate finance. I worked in finance for about 2.5 years, and I hated waking up every single day. And I was like 25 years old. I was like, why am I doing this? Like the internet exists. You can literally do anything you want. Like literally, you have to put a little bit of work into it, but you can do anything you want at this point because of the internet. And so it was the day before Thanksgiving here in the United States, and I quit my job just like completely on a whim. So the next day, family parties, that was a blast, telling everybody I just quit this like pretty good job. You make a lot of money in finance. That part was nice, but I hated doing it. So it didn't matter. So at that point, I kind of just like putzed around a little bit. Like I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I learned some digital marketing. So I did some freelance, just like Facebook advertising and Google PPC for a little while, really just tried to understand something and keep my brain moving and learning. And then I was watching the 2018 Olympic Games, and it was actually downhill skiing, which is really funny. We were talking about that before. And one of the athletes that was going down the slope or the hill, whatever the hell we're calling it, they were wearing an American flag. So I was rooting for them. I was like, this is awesome. Like, that's mine. Like, yeah, let's go. And it's like, but I actually have no idea who Sarah Hendrickson is. So let me Google search it, right? So I Google searched her name, found out a little about her story. I thought it was incredible. Next athlete comes up. They're wearing a red, white, and blue. Let's go. I love this person. Kevin Bickner. Who the hell's Kevin Bickner? Let's look up his story. So I started looking up some of these athletes' stories and then realized that we were talking a little bit about it before. The top 1% of the top 1% of Olympic athletes actually make really, really good money. The other 99.9% make absolutely nothing. And I know the systems are different all over the world, but here in the United States, it makes no sense how it works. So I started just talking to people. I just started talking to people in sports. I started talking to agents. I started talking to people in the Olympic space, outside the Olympic space, just to understand, like, I see a problem here. There's all these athletes, they all have an audience, but none of them are making money. How I see the problem. Now I just have to figure out what that solution is. And the solution was the what has eventually turned into our athletes, which is where I've worked with and have essentially a stable roster, whatever you want to call it, of 150 Olympic and Paralympic athletes, where I now know each of their stories, who they are, and what they do. So this allows me to reach out to thousands of brands and say, this athlete loves your product. They want to use your product. They would love to be honored to represent your product. And oh, by the way, these other 5 athletes do too. So what if we put all 6 or 5 of these athletes together? We were able to create kind of a package deal. So that way now your brand, you have all these different stories you can connect to, all these different audiences, all these different people, and you can tell different stories throughout social media, throughout digital, throughout TV content. So it was really just kind of the process of finding that problem, right? Entrepreneurialism is just finding a problem and making the solution to it. And I did that, but then again, the pandemic hasn't helped, but it was working really well for a while, which was a lot of fun. So it was very frustrating to see that there was this major problem. And as you said, honing your craft day in and day out, man. Like that's it. There's really not much there. It's sales, so just again the skills, the knowledge, and desire. I had this sales skills. I was coming from a finance background that was mostly sales based. I had the knowledge of the Olympic athletes and understanding the sponsorship space and what was going on because I learned about it, and I had the desire to help those athletes. So I was able to take those 3 things, put it together, eventually turn it into a business. We made some pretty good money, and now we're in a pandemic, so I guess it is what it is. But good question. Hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, you actually did. Thank you so much. And on the personal note, I'm working on like a soccer media program in which we are trying to work out a podcast and everything. And
Nice.
I'll be like more glad to invite you over if you can sometime or
Yeah.
in the future.
Can just connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message, and then we'll find a time to hop on like a 30-minute call, just the 2 of us, and I can answer any of your more specific questions you have there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Perfect. No problem, man.
Yeah, and you mentioned, or we were discussing actually the more like micro levels. So finding, for example, companies, even the local companies with the even lower level athletes, even Olympic athletes, but like from the macro level, and it's more about trend and you're actually how you see the future. Do you see that like the future in the terms of China, for example, Asia market, when the money can be an additional source of money, when your local, so US market, probably Europe is the same, will be like completely out of this for you, or I will mute. Okay. Or are you seeing the future in the Asia market and looking for deals right there? I know for now the political context is very very difficult, but like I would say as a whole Asia, whether you will see the future right there and finding maybe deals for your athletes right there in the future, not now of course, but like in the future.
So no, that's a really good question, and I understand. Like it still comes down to the athletes and who they are. Like if they use products, Asian based products, then 100%, yeah, let's go. If the company's based in China, Japan, Korea, wherever in that Asian market, then that makes sense. If they don't, then it doesn't. Is the future going to be there? I mean, the future is where the money is, right? So there's really, I'm not really worried where it is or where it's going. Like I'm worried right now about who these athletes are, what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and how I can be an aid to that. Again, these deals that we're doing, they're not $1 million, $2 million deals. They're $5,000, $10,000. These athletes make $25,000 a year. If I can put an extra 15 grand in your pocket, I just more than doubled your income for the year. and you have to do some social media posts and have some fun with kids one day. Like, so that's kind of the way I look at it, is because these deals aren't those gigantic ones that you're probably thinking of. Everything's way more local. And, unless I'm working with a Chinese athlete or an athlete that has a tie to a brand that's based out of China, I'm not really even kind of, my brain's not even at that point yet. But it is a good question though.
Okay, Paolo, so you have the question.
Hi.
What's up, buddy?
Nice meeting you.
Pleasure.
Very interesting so far. My question is more, I've worked in the media industry and the entertainment industry for quite a few years. And we did a lot of branded content. One of the main issue here in Spain, at least, is always dealing with agencies. It's really hard to touch a brand, even when you're MTV or even when you're Viacom or even when you're a big brand, because each brand has an agency or more than an agency, and they hate you directly. They just don't want to share anything. So, how do you deal with the agency of the brand? I'm talking more about the brand, and I'd be interested in knowing how you deal with agents of the athlete, because many times they have it, and the lower you go, the less professional they are, which sometimes helps. Sometimes it's even an extra burner, because they have their friends from high school that is their agents, and it's a mess. If you could let me know about it.
That is a really good question, actually. I'll answer the agent one before the agency one. The agent one is actually really easy. Hey, does your athlete want $10,000? That's as easy. Honestly, like I make it a joke, but like that, like I've dealt with agents before in that capacity and pretty much just been like, hey, I'm working with a brand. They're looking for a swimmer who's a mom of 3 kids. Your athlete's a swimmer. She's a mom. She has 3 kids. Like, this is what the deal's for. Like, this is how much it is. This is how much I'm taking. You guys want the rest. And honestly, it's that simple. Again, not working with the top tier of athletes, it probably makes my life a heck of a lot easier, right? Again, I'm not going to, Maverick Carter or Rich Paul to talk about LeBron James and, $1 billion Pepsi deal he just signed. Obviously, that's not happening. But with the athletes that I'm dealing with and the ones that I want to deal with, it's made it very easy, because if I just kind of, I reach out to their agents just to have a conversation, like, hey, I might have a potential deal. Not a single one has said, no, we don't want that. Not a single one has said, money, oh, we can't have that right now. Like, everyone is so open and honest, and it has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm very grateful from that standpoint, because again, coming in from a positive mindset, coming in to add value, literal dollars, all right, it makes it a lot easier. In terms of the agency side, that is 100% true. It is so frustrating to get in front of the right people. I mean, there's tools that we can use, right? There's, all those, how do you find the right email address? What are you using on LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, all that stuff. Just comes down to persistence, man. Like, that's about it. Networking as much as possible, and always trying to, again, add value to others. But that's always one thing, seeing who other people are connected to, and then saying, oh, hey, I see you have a friend over there at Kellogg's. Any chance you could introduce me to them, right? Like, it's as that simple. And you'd be surprised, at least I am surprised, by the amount of people that are just willing to say, like, yeah, sure, like, I'll introduce you to them. Like, does something happen? Sometimes it doesn't. But really, just the opportunity to, I mean, it's a lot of persistency in terms of following up and finding the emails and all that. So it's sales, right? You know how it is. So it is what it is. But the networking effect and meeting people and adding value and being a good person, I've found that has led to way more sales than cold calls and cold emails really ever would. So it's frustrating. It sucks, right? There's that like 7 days in a row where you don't talk to anybody and everyone hangs up on the phone with you. And there's that one day you get 3 people on the phone, you sell $50,000 worth of sponsorship, and you could pay your bills that month. So it's yeah, there's no secret sauce. It's just hard work, dedication. You know how it is. It's just frustrating. It's really all it comes down to. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also the question was like, and I got that from the friend who can't attend actually the event, was in terms of the internship, whether the cold emailing works, or you need to actually build that relationship. Of course, in the best case scenario, relationship's always great, but like greater than called emailing, but whether the emailing works, whether the company sees that even, for example, you write, and also then that would be my next question about like unpaid internships. So you dedicate yourself for 1 month for the summer for the particular sports institution or club, and how, from your experience, the institution reacts to that? Because as an employer, I would even say that, okay, we have a free hand to work with. That's a win-win situation. And what can be the potential reason to reject that candidate?
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of internships, obviously, as you said, like having a relationship with someone is always better. One thing again on that point though is LinkedIn is a tool for the good, right? All these companies, they have recruiters, all the recruiters are on LinkedIn and all the recruiters are paying attention. So what I would say is if you were to apply to any job, try and connect with 5, 6 people at that company that like are in close to that position, whether it's the person that's right above you or would be right above you, someone that was hired a year ago, someone that's super high up in the company. Just try and connect with like 5 people. It's as simple as, hey, I just applied for a job here, just learning more about the company culture. If you have 5 minutes, would love to chat. That easy. And you would be surprised how many random people that you've never met on the internet would be like, absolutely, let's talk. And yeah, just let me know what's the job you apply for. I'll make sure to send the note to the recruiter. So it is crazy. I've seen it so many times in how easy that is. And it's such a simple thing because I've talked to multiple recruiters as well. They're always like, yeah, you'd be surprised. Nobody reaches out on LinkedIn. And the ones that do, like, it seems like it's the easiest thing in the world and probably everybody should do it, but not that many people do it. So it's really just taking that extra step again. It's what's the differentiator on your resume that makes you look a little bit different? And then what are you doing to actually try and get that internship or trying to get that job that's setting you apart? Could you repeat the second part of your question? I'm sorry, I kind of got on a tangent.
I am so into that question that I don't remember, but I have the next one also in terms of what you said already. Because like the second strategy that I heard recently was that find a person inside this company that on your position, for example, the future position, and that from who you can learn a lot, and then reach to that person in the LinkedIn and propose that you want an internship, send your CV and so on. And so which strategy, whether focus, for example, on like HR department and which already at the very beginning there, or just start from this person at the position? Because like from my experience, for example, when I applied, and not everybody reacts so positively when you just when you're, for example, let's say AA specialist and you apply for that job and you write to that person on LinkedIn, but with your CV and your proposition for internship, and the reactions are okay. For some are okay, but for others it's not so good. So that's why I'm questioning whether approaching directly, this kind of people are a good strategy.
Yeah, I would say both, right? Like, I don't think there is a secret sauce to that. I've personally, done both sides of it. I have friends that have done both sides of it. I think you have to reach out to an HR person because they're ultimately going to be the person that says, yes, move on to the next interview, or no, you're not moving on to the next interview. But I do think it's important to reach out to the people in that department as well, because you can actually get an understanding and a feel of what that job would look like, as you said, but also have the opportunity to potentially make a good introduction, have a nice conversation with someone, and then you quickly find out they are the second interview, right? It's kind of, I wouldn't say there's one, I wouldn't say either or, I would say both to that. Now, obviously it's going to take a little extra time, of course, but I think it's important to understand that when you're trying to get a job, you're selling yourself, right? You're fluffing up your resume with words that you've never used before, but man, do they sound good. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to take both sides of that and understand that the time, the effort, the energy is going to need to be put into it. And it's going to be worth it one day. It might not feel like it, but it will be worth it one day. And eventually you will get that job. So sorry to answer it that way, but I think it's definitely both. Talk to the people in the position that you want, talk to the people, the boss of the position that you want, talk to the people in the HR department. And the more connections you have in a company, the better at that point.
And I know that you're passionate about sport and like into that industry so for years right now. But have you thought about like extending your services as a company to the artists, for example, in that world? Because this is very similar situation for them actually, where they have talent, they have a very small circle, but of very, very connected fans or followers, and they're kind of like micro influencers. Whether you thought about like extending services to them?
I try and stay in my lane, honestly. Like I
Okay.
try and stay where, because if you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to nobody. If you are known as I'm that one guy that works with those Olympic athletes, that's what I want to be known as, because then everyone's going to remember me. If it was just that guy that works with athletes, I think like that doesn't do anything for anyone. The more specific you can make it, the more I can own this lane, the further down in my career, that's how I will become more successful, is because I'll develop those relationships, that brand within my circle of people, and be able to be kind of known as that guy that does that one specific thing really, really well.
I also just received the message, like also from a person who or student who can attend, and just to ask you whether you plan to extend the services to Europe, like even outsource, so be in cooperation with someone and do the same in Europe as a one brand. Have you thought about that, for example, or you just one person company, one quality, and stay in that line?
Eventually, yeah, eventually I could see that happening. Right now, again, the pandemic hasn't been helping, so we'll see. We'll see what the next year holds. But until then, we'll I'm kind of trying to stay lean and just try and help the athletes that I'm working with now, because new athletes are coming in every single year, right? Some athletes retire, some athletes come in, some become gold medalists. That's just kind of how that process works. So eventually that's always an opportunity. Right now, kind of in present day, I'm not even thinking about that yet. Good question though.
And also, like one question from my experience, like when I, for example, trained when I was very young. So you probably had some players or thought about some players who or athletes actually who are younger, for example, not so independent in terms of financially and so on. Have you encountered a situation when there is, for example, a discrepancy between what the athlete wanted and, for example, his or her parents? Let's say there was a conflict of interest, let's say, because in Europe, in soccer, for example, this is a common situation when the voice is not so unanimous and like there are tensions.
No. And
Oh,
thankfully I haven't. No. Again, like I'm more understanding who the athlete is and what they are and what they want, and then try and go find the money. So if I come back to somebody and say I found $5,000 and their parents are like, no, I want 7, I just say, well, I have $5,000. Do you want it or not? Like that's essentially what it comes down to, because that's as easy as we can make it. Again, I'm not in the, I'm not a manager. I'm not an agent. Like I'm specifically just trying to help Olympic athletes make money. And if you want it, great. If not, again, as I said, there's 5 athletes that I'm trying to work on with one deal. If one of those athletes' parents says they don't want it, all right, cool. Now I'm working with 4 athletes on this one deal. Now the money gets shifted around a little bit, but nothing really changes there. So I just don't put myself in those situations because I don't want to. I'm sure I could if I tried, but I really don't want to be in those situations.
and at the end, I just want to ask you also, from experience of deals that you made already, companies from what industries actually are like the most interested in investing or cooperating with the athletes?
Technology is always fun.
Mhm.
Fitness, especially now, because there's so many at-home fitnesses and the apparel brands and everything, and then anything that you put in your mouth. So food, drugs, alcohol. Usually not really super incorporated with Olympic athletes, but I have done a couple deals with like retired athletes, which is cool. And any type of drink, anything like that. So those would be like the 3 main kind of areas that you focus most of your time on, because technology companies are just looking to burn money. Fitness companies, obviously, again, with athletes, it's a pretty easy comparison, pretty easy one-to-one to make. And then food, nutrition, snacks, beverages, all those types of things as well. Those are really the industries I try and stick to the most.
And at the end, can I ask you, when you compare the ratio between, for example, book you wrote and the podcast you're making, which made a greater impact on you in terms of your personal development, in terms of the community that you're building right now still? And because, for example, for me, I encountered book first, then a podcast.
Mhm.
And so, which of these two? Because maybe it will be some kind of tips for someone, or a tip
Yep.
for someone who plans to do a podcast, let's say, or blog, or stuff like that. So which one was like more successful in order to build like your online presence, let's say, or industry presence?
Yeah, it's the podcast. I really use the podcast because it's more of a I use it as a business development tool, right? So I'm reaching out to people at brands that I want to talk to. And then I just get the opportunity to talk to them for 45 minutes on it. Like, how often do you sit down with someone, no cell phones, no people around, there's no food in front of you, you're just staring at each other one-on-one having a 45-minute conversation? Like, when you say it like that, it really doesn't happen that often, right? Like, you have your phone out, maybe you'll check that, you'll have the TV on. But when you do one of these, and the way I've set it up, it's just me and you, and we're just talking to each other for 45 minutes. I get to ask all the questions I want to ask to understand the brand, understand what they're trying to do, how they're trying to do it, why they're doing it, who else they know, why do they like that person, all these types of things. And that allows me just kind of unabided attention that you're not going to get anywhere else, right? You have a Zoom call. How many people's screens are off right now? I wouldn't blame them. They're probably scrolling on their phones a little bit. We've been doing this thing for 50 minutes. No one wants to listen to me talk for 50 minutes. But in a podcast, you can't do that, right? Like, we're recording, we're one-on-one, it's live, you have to pay attention. So I personally think it's the podcast. It's grown my network significantly because now I can reach out to anyone at this point and say, hey, I'd love to have you on my show. And it's a way easier ask than, hey, can I? It's the weirdest thing in the world. Asking somebody for an hour-long interview, I get more yeses than a 5 to 10 minute quick phone call to learn about them. It's the weirdest thing in the world because they also give me that 5 to 10 minute phone call because I need information for the interview, right? So it's like this whole backwards system. But just by saying, hey, I'd love to interview you, it's like 45 minutes. More people are willing to do that because they see the value for them. It's their story gets out there. They're getting the publicity. They're getting the PR hit. It's not just me asking them for something. So that's kind of, it's like this really backwards way of me getting what I want, them getting what they want, and me really just learning as much as I possibly can about them or their company or what they're trying to do.
And like the 3 years, like from 2017 or 17, or I would say 18, like the trend in the podcasting was like short forms, just for example, like more like a newsroom, just to provide them necessary information. Then it start changing. And for me, I'm a great believer. I'm passionate about the big format, so long conversation. Joe Rogan is the best, for example, example here, right? Do you see that in sport? Because like of the competition, and like the sport is so prevalent in terms of every discipline. Like you have ESPN, you have multiple TV channels, YouTube channels, websites, and so on, so on. Every single day, even in the pandemic, you have a match to watch. Do you think that there is a space for long format podcasts in sports industry?
I hope so, because mine's like an hour long. So
I'm saying, for example, 2 hours, let's say. Of course, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if it's good conversation, people are going to listen, right? I mean, even just take Joe Rogan, for example. He has UFC guys on all the time. Then those conversations are 2 hours and 2.5 hours long. I don't watch UFC, but I listen to them because they're really interesting, right? So I think it comes the personality. I think it's rather than worrying about the time, like unless you're trying to fit something into a box, I try not to pay attention. I've had some conversations with athletes that have been 3 hours long, and they've been some of my favorite interviews that I've done because their stories are that incredible. And I keep asking questions and I keep wanting to know more, and they keep giving me more information. Then I've had ones that are 20 minutes that feel like they're 3 hours long because they're so damn boring, right? So it's really, I think it comes down to the actual story and the ability to have a conversation that people want to listen to. And, I'm not perfect at it. I feel like I've gotten much better at it. I've only done it like 400 times now. But I think it's really important to understand, like, rather than paying attention to the numbers, right? Like, let's be honest, like, I'm not going to go and sign $100 million Spotify deal anytime soon. So I don't really care. Again, I use it for the business development more than I use it for people to actually listen. Do people listen? Yeah, like hundreds of thousands of people have listened to my voice at this point, but I don't care about that. Like, it's cool. I hope I'm giving them great content. They keep coming back. I'm grateful for it. But in reality, I use it as a tool rather than a way for me to become a podcaster, become famous. I mean, I did get a radio show from it, which is really cool. So I love that. But that, again, that wasn't an end goal. That's just something fun I get to do. So it's kind of, you have to understand, like, why are you creating it? Do you want to create it to be a full-time podcaster? Then yeah, you have to worry about the exact number of the exact minute, the clips, everything. If you're using it as a tool to meet people and network and use it as a business development idea, then in that case, I just think give people good content, make sure there's some sort of audience, and you should be good to go from there.
Okay, so thank you very much for the time
Of
and
course.
being with us. That was
No other questions? Nobody else?
we'll post on YouTube. And I think if someone has a question or someone who can't attend today, LinkedIn is the best tool
Yes,
for that.
please.
You are available. We'll share your book actually for free, so thank you for that also. And we'll share the link for your podcast. And I hope
Awesome.
good luck for you, for your company, and like yeah, thanks.
Oh, thank you guys. Sincerely appreciate each and every one of your time. It's the only thing we don't get more of. So thank you for giving me some of yours. And yeah, enjoy the book. I think I sent you two versions, right? There's the PDF version, and then there's I sent you the e-reader version. So if you have like the Kindle app or iBooks on your phone, you can read it through that, because I can't scroll like 100-page PDF. I think that's absolutely bonkers. So hopefully, if you have one of those, it makes it a lot easier to actually pay attention to. But no, sincerely, everybody, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, you got just one piece of information from this. Be a good person. It's a pretty easy one. But hopefully some other good stuff. Hopefully you find something else in the book and enjoy it from there. So thank you guys.
Thank you.